The secret to slow speed control isn't just the clutch. In 20 seconds, you'll see an amateur lurch and a pro glide through the same tight U-turn. Keep your eyes on the clutch hand the whole time. That instant side by side is where you'll start noticing the difference. Many riders shorten clutch life without realizing it, often because they see the lever as an on-off switch. Pros know better. They treat clutch, throttle, and rear brake as a connected system, working together instead of fighting each other. By the end of this video, you'll have a 15-minute practice drill you can try in a parking lot to feel your friction zone and immediately cut clutch wear. To see why this matters, let's start with what most riders get wrong from the very first movement of their clutch hand: the amateur's costly mistake. Have you ever felt your bike jump forward in an uneven burst while another rider next to you seems perfectly stable? That unevenness usually traces back to one costly mistake: treating the clutch like a simple on-off switch. When riders pull the lever all the way in and then let it straight out, they miss the subtle range of control in between. This misunderstanding sets off a chain of problems that makes low-speed riding harder, rougher, and more expensive in the long run. Snapping the lever open and close sends sudden power shocks into the transmission. The result is a jerky launch that strains the drivetrain and often ends in a stall at the worst possible time. Watch closely during an amateur's start. Their hand drags the lever across its full travel, making wide sweeps, not millimeters. That wasted motion highlights the absence of precision. Cut to a 4 to 6 second replay showing the amateur lurch and then the pro. Listen as the voiceover points out the wide lever travel versus the pro's tiny adjustments you can barely see. This aggressive engagement accelerates clutch wear and can lead to glazing, inconsistent engagement points, and earlier repairs. The constant slipping and grabbing generate heat that eats away at the friction plates and release mechanism. Over time, the bike begins to feel unpredictable. Engagement points shift, shifts get sloppy, and expensive parts start failing sooner than they should. The instability doesn't stop there. Riders who can't control the clutch smoothly end up compensating in the wrong ways. Dragging the rear brake at walking speeds, dabbing feet to save balance, or slipping the clutch even harder to mask mistakes. Each of these habits feeds back into the same problem, creating a loop of jerky motion, instability, and unnecessary wear. Here's something practical you can use right away. Watch and feel for the first subtle forward tug and the slight rise in engine note. That's your biting point. That tiny cue signals the exact zone where real control begins. Professionals live inside this narrow range, working in millimeters rather than inches. Their smoothness comes from riding precisely at that edge instead of bouncing past it. Grasping this difference in lever control sets the stage for the next step, because true mastery doesn't come from the clutch alone. It comes from the way every control on the motorcycle works together. The three-control dance perfect slow-speed riding depends on a rhythm professionals call the three-control dance. It's the coordinated use of the clutch, throttle, and rear brake to create stability without fighting against your own inputs. Amateurs often work each control in isolation, adjusting the throttle, then jerking the clutch, then stomping the brake. Each correction cancels out the last, and the result is a jerky, unbalanced ride. Professionals instead hold one constant: the throttle. They keep the throttle gently elevated, usually at low revs appropriate to the bike. Many instructors recommend keeping friction zone work at roughly 1,500 to 2,000 RPM or thereabouts on most street bikes. A steady low throttle means instant, predictable torque is available when you slightly release the clutch, avoiding the on-off jerkiness that happens when you chase the throttle. With that stable power source in place, speed is controlled almost entirely through clutch finesse. The hand barely moves, just millimeters in and out of the friction zone, while the engine note stays smooth and unchanging. The rear brake enters the dance as a supporting tool for stability, not as the primary slow-speed control, because dragging it constantly builds heat and extra wear. A light touch is enough to check balance in a turn, stop rollback on an incline, or refine your line. This extra point of control steadies the bike without stealing power from the clutch and throttle relationship. When you watch a skilled rider flow through a U-turn, you'll notice how little appears to be happening. The lever hardly moves, the throttle hums at one steady pitch, and the rear brake taps lightly at key moments. Each control reinforces the others. The clutch meters out torque, the throttle maintains smooth energy, and the brake provides quiet backup. Throttle steady, clutch micro moves, brake only to support. That's the memory phrase worth keeping. In the next clip, count how many times the pro's clutch lever visibly moves. You should see only tiny, almost imperceptible adjustments. That precision is what separates guesswork from real control and sets the stage for the next key skill, understanding exactly where your clutch begins to bite. Finding your friction zone. Finding your friction zone is where real control begins. This is the precise range in the clutch lever's travel where the plates start to engage, allowing you to feed in just the amount of power you need without a stall or a surge forward. Riders who rush straight past this range or treat it as a throwaway moment lose the chance to control their bike with accuracy. Professionals don't pass through it. They work inside it. They do this by building muscle memory for exactly where the clutch starts to bite and how far the lever needs to move to hold that spot. Instead of big sweeping pulls, they ride the edge with movements measured in millimeters. Before you even start practicing, check that your clutch-free play is correct. For most bikes, that means roughly 10 to 20 millimeters of slack at the lever, but if you're unsure, your owner's manual will give the exact spec. Too much or too little free play makes the friction zone almost impossible to locate consistently. Once adjusted properly, the best way to identify the zone is through feedback. As you slowly release the lever, feel for three things: the first slight forward tug, a subtle change in engine note, and a faint vibration through the lever. Those sensory cues confirm you're inside the friction zone. Practicing this with the engine off, bike in first gear, clutch pulled in, and rolling forward by foot helps you learn where resistance begins and ends without pressure or distractions. With repetition, these signals become second nature, and your hand automatically finds the biting point every time. What transforms average riders into smooth operators is learning how different parts of the zone serve different needs. Use the very beginning of the friction zone for slow balance and tight weaving. Stay in the mid-range when you want steady crawling or controlled parking lot practice. Move closer to full engagement only when you're ready to accelerate into traffic. This clear mapping of the zone lets you treat the clutch as a fine control tool, not just a start and stop switch. Mastering this range doesn't just build smoothness, it creates consistency under pressure. And that consistency matters most when gravity is working against you. The hill start secret. So what happens when the road tilts upward and you need to launch without sliding back or cooking your clutch? That's where the hill start secret comes in. Hill starts test whether you've really learned control because the margin for error is thin and mistakes multiply fast. Many riders tense up, mash the throttle, or stall as they fight gravity. Using the clutch alone to hold a hill forces continuous slipping, which overheats and can glaze friction plates. Practice using the rear brake to hold and then hand the job to the clutch for the launch. Professionals approach the situation differently. They begin by holding the rear brake firmly enough to keep the bike from rolling. This takes the pressure off the clutch entirely, buying time to set up a smooth launch. With the brake engaged, they bring in a gentle throttle and ease the clutch into the friction zone. As soon as the bike begins pressing against the brake, they know forward drive is ready to take over. That's the split second where technique separates amateurs from skilled riders. At that moment, the rear brake is released gradually in a smooth, controlled handoff. Slow enough you can feel the bike push forward while you ease off the brake. This transition avoids dumping extra work onto the clutch and instead allows it to engage cleanly. In side-by-side comparisons, you'll see amateurs making big lever movements while their RPM swings erratically, while pros show steady throttle, almost invisible clutch adjustments, and a calm, balanced rollout. The method works because it assigns each control to its correct role. Brake for holding, clutch for power transfer, throttle for consistent drive. The launch is smoother, the bike feels stable, and the clutch doesn't suffer unnecessary heat or wear. If you must hold on a steep hill for an extended period, come to a stop in neutral if possible and rest the clutch. Repeatedly holding the friction zone to stay on a hill is what accelerates wear. Here's a quick parking lot drill you can try. Find a gentle incline, hold the rear brake, Blip the throttle to about 1,500 to 2,500 RPM, depending on your bike. Ease the clutch to the bite. Feel the bike pressing forward, then slowly release the rear brake as you increase clutch engagement. This simple sequence builds confidence and reinforces the right muscle memory. Getting this right shows that control is about coordination, not clinging to a single input. And once you experience that smooth rollout, you'll be ready to take on the next step, structured practice that can reshape your clutch feel in just one short session. The 15-minute transformation drill. What makes practice actually change the way you ride is structure. That's where the 15-minute transformation drill comes in. Instead of riding aimlessly around a parking lot and reinforcing the same habits, this gives you a step-by-step framework to sharpen your clutch feel quickly and effectively. Before starting, take a moment for ergonomics. Adjust lever reach so your wrist, hand, and fingers line up in a straight line. Choose the number of fingers that feels natural. 1 or 2 for light or off-road clutches, 3 or 4 for heavier ones. This setup reduces early fatigue and gives you more precise lever control. And always do the drill in an empty parking lot with your protective gear on. If your hand gets tired, stop and reset your lever position instead of pushing through. Fatigue is one of the most common early limiters and can keep you from practicing with consistency. Here's the exact time breakdown. 0 to 5 minutes, static friction zone discovery. With the engine on and the bike in gear, slowly release the clutch until you feel the biting point where the bike wants to move forward. Use no throttle yet. Just focus on noticing the feel, sound, and vibration cues. 5 to 10 minutes. Low-speed crawl and cone slalom. Add a steady low throttle, then use tiny clutch adjustments to move forward at walking pace. Set up cones or markers about 15 feet apart and weave through them while keeping all speed control in the clutch, not the brake. Focus on millimeter-level lever movements and how the bike steadies when you stay inside the friction zone. 10 to 15 minutes, hill start practice. Pick a slope, hold the bike with the rear brake, and then ease into the friction zone while maintaining steady throttle. Release the brake gradually only when you feel the bike pushing forward. After a few repetitions, take a short rest to notice how your hand feels and adjust the lever if needed. To measure your progress, track how many times you tap the rear brake during the slalom compared to before the drill, then share that number in the comments. You'll find these 15 minutes do more for sensitivity and coordination than hours of unstructured riding. And as you continue practicing, you'll begin noticing a deeper truth about clutch work, one that separates strong inputs from precise ones. Clutch control at the professional level is about precision, not force. The real difference comes from treating it as a coordinated system between throttle, brake, and clutch. Proper technique reduces unnecessary slipping and heat, which helps avoid glazing and premature repairs. Here are 3 key takeaways. 1. Keep throttle steady at low revs while you micro-move the clutch. 2. Use the rear brake as support, not the primary slow-speed tool. 3. Practice the 15-minute drill and check your lever reach. Try the 15-minute drill on your next ride and drop a comment. What changed first? Fewer dabs, less brake drag, or smoother launches? Start slow, use protective gear, and practice in a quiet space before trying this in traffic.